All-terrain vehicles have always amazed with their technical solutions and unconventional sizes, but today I've gathered for you the most unusual projects that will astonish even the most seasoned viewer. From vehicles the size of a house to the Third Reich's underground Serpent, intended to not just traverse anywhere, but to do so directly right through. And at the end, I'll show you a mysterious American all-terrain vehicle that they tried to hide in the snows of Antarctica and then completely submerged. Why? Watch to find out at the end. ZIS E-134. The 50s. An era where legends of Soviet automaking were born. Imagine, the Cold War is at its peak and then a real engineering monster appears on the scene. A super transporter conceived as the soldier's best friend. Its mission? To be invulnerable to any obstacles, be it mud, water, or other barriers. This wonder was the brainchild of the industrial enterprise named after Joseph Stalin. There, in 1954, they kickstarted this ambitious project. The goal was to create a vehicle capable of carrying up to 3.5 tons of cargo, towing a trailer weighing up to 6.5 tons, and easily maneuvering over any terrain. Sounds like a real challenge, doesn't it? And so, a year later, the legendary Vitaly Grachev, maestro of Soviet off-roading, presents the world with the prototype of this giant. Let's call it prototype number 1. What's special about it? First, the wheels. An astonishing distance of 1.5 meters between the axles. The driver could control this behemoth effortlessly thanks to the power steering, which at that time was an amazing technology. In tests, prototype number 1 performed brilliantly. Trenches, walls, fords, there were no barriers for it. And following it came prototype number 2, or ZIS-134E2, even more advanced. It became the progenitor of the famous ZIL amphibians, but alas, none of these engineering masterpieces ever went into mass production. At that time, most of the funding was directed towards rocket construction. Trom-20, another marvel of modern engineering, this giant is not just an all-terrain vehicle but a real transformer. With its 3-segment, 12-wheel design, it looks like a machine from a science fiction movie capable of adapting to any conditions. And here's the most interesting part, the last section detaches. Very practical. Trom-20 can easily transport 5.5 tons of cargo through the most menacing swamps, and in the passenger version, up to 25 people. And that's not all. On solid surfaces, it can carry a whopping 11 tons, and how does it do it? Thanks to its new 69 by 31.5 inch tires. These aren't just wheels, they're 2-meter-tall monsters, allowing Trom-20 to carry huge loads without losing mobility. And what else can it transport? Logs, pipes, any heavy long cargo. But that's still not all. Imagine, it can be fitted with a fire tank for extinguishing forest fires, equipment for laying winter roads, even a drilling crane setup. And its ability to swim makes it unique in its class. A very worthy and in-demand machine worldwide thanks to its absolute versatility. But let's talk about something completely unreal. The Midgard Serpent, even the name sounds like something from a world of myths and legends. That's the name given to the grandiose project of German engineer Ritter, inspired by Australian-Hungarian trench diggers. Imagine an all-terrain vehicle that could become the biggest and longest armored transporter in history? Ritter began working on this project in 1934. His goal was to create a hybrid armored vehicle that could drive like a tank, dig tunnels underground, and submerge underwater up to 330 feet. The Midgard Serpent was to consist of 77 separate cells, each measuring 22.3 feet wide, 11.5 feet high, and 19.7 feet long, giving a total length of 1,700 feet. At the front of the construction was planned a drilling rig with 4 5-foot diameter drills. To operate it, 9 engines with a total power of 8,800 horsepower were planned. And for propulsion, 14 engines with a power of 19,800 horsepower. It was expected to travel about 18.6 miles an hour on land, 6.2 miles an hour underground, 1.9 miles per hour underwater. Wow! On board the Midgard Serpent was planned to carry 34,000 cubic feet of fuel, as well as an electric kitchen, sleeping quarters, workshops, periscopes, and much other equipment. The armament would include 1,000 mines, light charges, and paired machine guns. The total weight of such a machine would be 66,000 tons, and the crew? 30 people. However, the project was too expensive and ambitious even for Nazi Germany. and they failed to find funding for its realization. At the end of World War II, remnants of some large construction, presumably parts of the Midgard Serpent, were found near Königsberg, but it was not possible to definitely identify them. ZIL E-167 is a very ambitious Soviet project. Once again, the genius Vitaly Grashev and his team at the ZIL Design Bureau take on the task. The client, none other than the Moscow city Sovnarkhos, and so in a short time they create a wonder. ZIL E-167 is not just an all-terrain vehicle, it's a real giant. It was built on the basis of the ZIL 135L chassis, but was much lighter. A fiberglass body reduced the weight to 13 tons, and not just the body, but also the fiberglass wheels developed in collaboration with the BOM and Moscow State Technical University. This was truly revolutionary. And another highlight, two powerful 180 horsepower V8 engines, one for each side. This allowed it to traverse rough terrain with a range of 373 miles thanks to its 240-gallon fuel tank. But why didn't this masterpiece go into mass production? Alas, the answer lies in its technical complexity. At that time, the USSR preferred simpler and more accessible solutions such as the GTT track transporter. Thus, ZIL E-167 remained only a prototype and experimental proof of what Soviet engineers were capable of. The ET-8 was yet another project born from the pen of Soviet engineers. The early 1960s, the Cold War era, and in the USSR, they again embarked on creating something unimaginable. Under the leadership of A.M. Klebnikov in a special department of the Institute, the YA-194 project, unofficially named Hurricane, was conceived. The task? To transport people and cargo through swamps and snow. It was a real challenge. This snow-swamped vehicle had many interesting features, like tire pressure adjustment right from the driver's seat. An experimental model was made in 1962, and many saw similarities with the American Terra Cruiser MM1. However, of course, there was a significant difference in the innards. The Americans had an aviation engine, while the Soviet all-terrain vehicle had a standard automotive motor. Designers tried to use mass-produced components and assemblies. The cabin was taken from the ATS, and the ZIL 375 engine with its 180 horsepower provided a leisurely forward movement. Interestingly, there was no suspension at all. Instead, pneumatic rollers were used, which provided high passability and shock absorption, simplifying the design and reducing weight. In tests, the Hurricane performed excellently, especially in marshy terrain. It moved steadily, maintaining traction. Compared to tracked vehicles, like the GAS-47, it had a longer operational life. By 1963, the all-terrain vehicle was modernized. They installed another engine, the YAMZ-238, lengthened the body, and made a number of changes to the design. Changes also affected the payload. Now it was 5.5 tons, not 9. Expectations for the new technology were high. The all-terrain vehicle underwent trials in various conditions, demonstrating its main advantage, minimal damage to fossil layers, but unfortunately, at the state acceptance tests, it was found that the machine was almost twice as heavy as its American counterpart, and because of this, it was inferior in control and maneuverability. And so, the Hurricane remained just a chapter in the history of Soviet automaking, but did not become a mass production solution. The Special Design Bureau of ZIL was tasked with an unusual challenge: to create something absolutely incredible. A transporter for the N-1 rocket carrier, a true super heavyweight among all-terrain vehicles. This project was so grand that engineers had to start small with a scaled-down copy. Transporting such a huge load to Baikonur was a serious challenge. Railway transport limitations forced them to think of other options, hence the need for this incredible machine on 8 four-wheel stands capable of carrying 110 tons and moving on a track width of 37 feet. At the first stage, they created the conditionally scaled model ZIL 135 MSH, the size of a regular truck but with a hybrid filling. And here's the most amazing part: everything below the cabin was pure innovation. Pivot supports from the I-118 aircraft, hydro-pneumatic suspension, the ability to change ground clearance height. Each wheel had a built-in 15 kilowatt electric motor, and the stands could rotate 90 degrees to improve maneuverability. And the gasoline engine in the body was only for powering a 120 kilowatt generator, which in turn drove the motor wheels. Another V8 engine was used to rotate the rear axle, which helped in difficult situations. However, unfortunately, this engineering masterpiece never saw the light of day in full size. The project concept changed and the idea of a giant capable of carrying a spacecraft was abandoned. The Rhino was an all-terrain vehicle created by Eli Ignites, an engineer with a unique view of the world. He was an extraordinary person, inspired by nature itself, which led him to create such unusual mechanisms. The Rhino, an all-terrain vehicle, indeed resembled its animal namesake. This metal giant with huge spherical front wheels weighing 1,500 pounds each and smaller rear ones was a true marvel of engineering thought. With its length of 19 feet, width of 9.5 feet, and height of 8.8 feet, it was like a real iron rhinoceros, albeit without a horn. And here's the most amazing thing. Despite its dimensions and a weight of 5.5 tons, the Rhino could accelerate up to 43.5 miles an hour on the highway and up to 5 miles per hour on water. And its ability to overcome inclines of up to 60 degrees and roll over only at 75 degrees was a real wonder. The creator's intent was noble, to use the all-terrain vehicle for patrolling the borders of the USA and Canada in inaccessible areas. However, border guards and the military did not appreciate the Rhino. Yes, its passability was unique, but it couldn't solve practical tasks, it couldn't carry many people or cargo, lacked armor, and was vulnerable. In the end, despite all its unusual characteristics and appearance that attracted journalists' attention, the Rhino remained a one-off. The vast 2122 Reka is a project that was worked on in Togliatti for a whole 11 years, from 1976 to 1987. Why so long? Because the task before the designers was truly challenging. They wanted to create not just another all-terrain vehicle, but a true multifunctional transport vehicle capable of handling both land and water. Reka was a real technical wonder. It could swim by rotating its own wheels. Before submerging in water, it was enough to close the front air intake to seal the engine compartment, and voila! A 1 and 3 gasoline engine, transmission, transfer case, all were ready for swimming. Transmission and running gear components were even borrowed from the legendary Neva. Work on the Reka was unhurried but very thorough. 6 versions were released, each taking into account the mistakes and shortcomings of the previous ones. Thus, in the 3rd version, they managed to eliminate problems with cooling and transmission overload. The 4th version's all-terrain vehicles underwent over 20,000 test miles and 50 hours of swimming. After all these tests, the Reka was recommended for military use and mass production, but alas, even after such an impressive amount of work, the vast 2122 was never launched into mass production. The Army simply did not find the means for it. The snow cruiser, created in 1939 by the Illinois Institute of Technology and Thomas Poulter, who had experience in Antarctic expeditions, was something completely new and revolutionary.
Wow!
Imagine 55.8 feet in length, 19.7 feet in width, and 16.4 feet in height, thanks to its pneumatic suspension. This giant could reach speeds of up to 30 miles an hour and travel 5,000 miles on a single refueling, thanks to its enormous fuel tank of nearly 2,600 gallons. The snow cruiser was so well thought out that it could serve not only as transport, but also as a dwelling for the crew in case of unforeseen circumstances. It had rooms, storage spaces for food, fuel, and other materials. It also had a compartment for storing and heating the wheels to prevent them from cracking in the cold, and even a rooftop platform for a 5-seat airplane with an additional fuel tank. However, despite all these innovations, the operation of the snow cruiser proved problematic. The large, treadless wheels did not allow it to move forward properly, and the vehicle had to be driven in reverse, leading to engine overheating. As a result, the crew managed to cover only 90 miles in 14 days. After Poulter returned to the USA, the snow cruiser became a scientific base, but was eventually forgotten in the snows due to World War II. It was discovered in 1946 and 1958, but then disappeared, and many thought it was stolen by Soviet authorities. However, it is more likely that this unique all-terrain vehicle rests somewhere at the bottom of the ocean, where it was sent by authorities to prevent the Soviets from acquiring these unique developments. As is often the case, many legendary projects, unfortunately, never go into mass production. Thanks for watching.